Colorado. We thank you for joining us today. Hopefully it'll be as informative for you as it will be for me on how to give a good seminar, webinar. Looking very forward to it. As part of Hispanic Contractors of Colorado, we have platinum members. These are the folks who help us keep our doors open on a regular basis, allow us to do the things we do for our membership and for our guests today, and providing these types of webinars in the times that we're in today. We have a board of directors. This is a list of the board members. We have 14 board members currently on HCC. These are all volunteers to give their time to help HCC for us to provide these types of services. So if you see or work with any of these individuals, please be sure to thank them. Our mission for HCC is build opportunities to strengthen and sustain our members' knowledge, connections, and voice within the public-private sector in the Colorado construction industry. We really believe in this mission and work hard in order to help our members. Today, we're lucky to have two sponsors, and we thank them: Access Solutions, Floor Preparation, Polish, Coatings, and Saunders Construction. These two firms stepped up to do a sponsorship, and it is appreciated. You too can be a sponsor of one of our future webinars. Just give me a call or send me an email, and we'll get you signed up. This special webinar was brought to us by Women in Leadership Committee. This is a photo of the folks on the committee. These folks have been very good in providing assistance to AHCC. They actually started in December of last year and are one of our most active committees. They have brought us some events for HCC, and today they are just helping us with this particular webinar. So we thank our Women in Leadership group. Our trainer, some of you have already heard Dena. Dena is a heavy hitter when it comes to helping individuals and teams create a more robust, impactful communication style and presence with interview and presentation coaching that helps firms win more work. A former Dale Carnegie instructor and trainer and founder of Marketing Evolutions, Dena brings more than 25 years of experience in architecture. If you just saw her, you can't believe it's 25 years. Anyway, in architecture, engineering, and construction industries. Dena's expertise adds another dimension to the communication both in person and virtually. In addition to having endless enthusiasm for helping clients successfully pursue projects and improve their public speaking and interviewing skills, Dena is helping firms navigate the ever-changing reality and adapt to online meetings and interviews. Welcome, Dena.
Thanks, Chris. So if you would stop sharing your screen, I have found the presentation that mysteriously disappeared.
Got it.
Perfect. As much as you do these, or I've done these things, it always surprises me of how many times something changes and goes wrong. Just when you think we tested it out, when Chris and I just got online this morning, the two of us, everything worked great, came back and it was gone. So I can't stress enough the importance of practice, practice, practice. We're gonna talk more about that though in a minute. Let's get going. For those, the webinar was titled How to Give a Better Webinar, but this is really everything from your virtual meetings, and if it's an OAC meeting with a client, a committee member meeting, as well as interviews. We're starting to see our life really change, and in these last 8 weeks, our owners have gone to using this virtual meeting setting to actually procure work and do their interviews. And knock on wood and fingers crossed, I'm so excited that so many of our clients have not put projects on hold, and they continue to look at ways to how can they be creative, how can they still pursue work during these crazy times. So kudos for them for figuring it out. But this is what's so annoying when I called this the old-fashioned days. Remember back in January when we just did audio calls? And this is what happened. People would get online, who's that? Who's speaking now? Who just called in? Do we have everyone? And it was just everyone talking over each other. It was really quite annoying. I sometimes secretly wish, though, that we were back in those days of January when I didn't have to be on video every single day. But we don't want to be one of those guys. You know, we don't want to make the grand entrance or be the one that constantly have to talk. So today, as we go through this, the main purpose is 12 tips to make your virtual meetings go well. We'll tie this into the interviews. We'll connect the dots however we can. It's to make you a better leader and a better performer. I say performer because I feel like we do sort of perform now when we're on video, but how to be a better participant as well, so we get the best out of these meetings. And as we see Colorado reopen, it's going to reopen slowly, and I think we're going to see this world of video exist for a few more months. So hang tight. It's going to be a wild ride for the next few months out there. So first, we want to have an agenda, and this is so important when we get to meetings. The number one complaint I hear from folks is our meetings aren't as productive as they used to be. The other thing I heard is people aren't following up and getting what they're supposed to get done as they used to. And so the agenda is really going to help us fight through that and make our meetings more productive. So we want to identify in that meeting. So the agenda needs to get out ahead of time so everyone knows what is going to be covered during that meeting, if they need to attend, and what those outcomes are and the goal of the meeting. The other thing we need to be cautious of, and it's a politeness. If we're leading this meeting, we're sending the agenda, give that expectation. Do you want your viewers to be on camera? Because not everyone is showering and getting dressed like they did when they were in the office. And so putting that expectation out there, and especially for internal meetings, I like to have people on camera. Okay, I like to have people on camera all the time because you can gauge the introduction or interaction of folks just a little bit more. It's so hard in this virtual world. We lose that connection and we don't have that feedback that we would have if we're all sitting in a conference room. But if we do have people with their video on, they're able to participate a little bit more. You know, we were able to have fun with Mike and Rochelle and some folks early on in this meeting because we could see them, right? And if we couldn't see them, we may not have had that same interaction without it. That's one of the reasons we did Zoom for this call, is because HCC is a tight group and your members are incredible. And the support they give to each other is also so needed in this time. And so we wanted everyone to not only be able to participate in the webinar, but come together as a group and be able to see one another and talk after the webinar is over as well. So if we know our cameras are going to be on, we obviously need to think about how we dress, right? So in your chat box, I'm curious, most people I see look really good today. So I'm guessing it was number 2, dress as if you were in person. I'm guessing the second option though might be that you only dress from the waist up, right? But we've seen all the newscasters out there, you still have to wear pants. Okay, I don't care if the pants maybe don't have to match, but still put on pants of some sort as you're on there. So you never quite know the angle of the camera. And then I love this last one too, that you didn't turn your camera on because you didn't shower. And I've had a couple people flat out refuse to turn their cameras on. So again, having that agenda, asking people to have it on ahead of time, helps set that expectation to do so. With a client, absolutely 100% of the time, you need to turn that camera on. Even if they don't have their camera on, you can build a connection. They can at least see you. They can see that you have empathy. They can get a better sense of who you are and keep building that relationship. So really think of this as, I know it's annoying, and I know we hate to look at ourselves and see ourselves on camera as well, but it's important for others to be able to see us to build that relationship. So this is one of the downfalls of Zoom, is as a presenter, I have a really tough time keeping an eye on the chat box. And so I won't ask you to do any of these, but I want you to think about, how do you dress to show up? And when you know you've got to be there, how are you showing up? This is my husband on the left, me on the right. My husband has been doing, obviously we've all been, at home, working from home now for, 8 weeks? I forget where we're at. But my husband has very few calls that request video. So he comes down, hair's a mess, hasn't shaved for a few days, baseball hat on usually. And I look at him, and then he looks at me and he's like, wow, another video call, huh? And I'm like, yep, another video call. I actually now keep 2 blazers on the back of my office chair. So if I get a call come in and I didn't realize it was supposed to be video, I can always throw on my blazer over whatever I'm wearing to help look professional in a very quick and easy manner. So think about this. This is, Chris was talking beforehand of having happy hours. Someone mentioned putting a cool bar background, virtual background up. So these kind of relaxed atmospheres are great. If you're with your friends, catching up, quick internal, how you doing? Absolutely, you can put your feet on the table, kick back. But if this is with a client, absolutely not. We cannot use this time as an excuse to get too informal and too casual with our relationships and with our appearance. So obviously we want to make sure that we're clean, well put together, look professional, like I said, at least from the waist up. And since we are all working at home, I think it's okay to be a little bit more casual, but I still want, for gentlemen, a collared shirt, a sweater, you know, a short sleeve button-up shirt, long sleeve dress shirt, something like that, that still shows professionalism. So no beach t-shirt, no concert t-shirt from the 80s, right, Mike? And I was like, oh, I have some good ones left in my closet. But we still want to look at what's professional. The biggest thing of all this, though, that we have to really pay attention to is the color, because we want to have a contrast to how we look. And even with the best lighting, it sometimes does not pick up on things. So a couple of people on this call that know me know that 90% of my wardrobe is black. Guess what? Black for me in the virtual world doesn't work. I look like a floating head because I have long dark hair. There's not enough color to separate that and show a black blazer. So having contrast, so for me, the lighter color of a tan, and I have 2 light jackets. Thank goodness I went shopping before this whole thing happened by accident, I think in February. But I have a tan blazer and a light blue blazer. So if you see me in this over these last couple of weeks and through the next few weeks, you'll probably start to realize that I only have, yes, 2 blazers. But it's the contrast that works. And so test this out in your room and make sure that you've got some colors that work for you. But typically very, very dark colors are not going to work. You're going to look either like a floating head or have no definition and sort of look like a blob. So make sure that you've got some good contrast with you, with your background, to make sure that you're wearing the right thing. Avoid very bright, loud colors or a lot of excessive patterns, because that's just going to reflect and get a little wonky. As well as any jewelry. Big jewelry can catch light, it can throw reflections. I was watching one just taped quick video thing that was on LinkedIn a couple of days ago, and the woman had on big dangly earrings. And all I focused on as I was watching this was how her earrings moved and caught the light. And I forgot what she was saying. So again, we want to make our distractions very minimal. We want those listeners to be able to focus on us and our message and not our background or not what we're wearing. And none of those things. All right, so moving right along. I get on my soapbox on a couple of these issues because I'm passionate about it, and it makes a huge difference of how we're viewed and how we come across online. So we have to practice, and not all practices work, as you've seen this morning with Chris and I. But we'll talk a little bit more about how we can cover from that and things that I had in place to make sure that it was fairly seamless in this. So I was curious to see what virtual platforms all of you are using. And if you would put this in the chat box, I want to come back and circle to this because there are some nuances between these different platforms and some good ins and outs on it. What I've been seeing is that most companies are using Zoom or Microsoft Teams. Those seem to be the 2 go-to programs out there. The other thing that we're seeing is when it comes to the client interview, our clients dictate the platform. And so we've got to be up and be, I guess, flexible and nimble enough to choose or to switch and use that platform that our clients are requesting. So in the last few weeks, I've had interviews happen on WebEx, on GoToMeetings, on Microsoft Teams, on Zoom. I think all of these, we have had situations. And so your thing to get there is to play around with the different platforms. As soon as you know a client puts out a request, get in that platform and start practicing. Hold all your practices in that. But the more familiar you can be with these platforms, the smarter and the more intelligent you're going to look. And the more seamless you can make this, that better impression that you're going to give for folks. So a couple things about some of the platforms as well. Microsoft Teams is making a lot of additions to their platform, trying to keep up with Zoom. So they've added the virtual backgrounds. They've got a few stock ones in there, but you can also add your own. They're also coming out later this month, I believe, with more availability on seeing folks. So that's why I love Zoom and wanted this, because on one single page, you can see 25 participants. Microsoft Teams, you're forced right now into just 4, but that's going to be expanding. I do like Teams, though, when sharing screens is a little bit more seamless. There's a few things that really work well with that. And you can also pin people. And so I can pin like this morning, I was in an interview prep. So I could pin the 4 participants that had the major speaking roles. So they were always on my screen. And even though they were sharing the screen and a PowerPoint and some visuals, that could be minimized. So I have a lot of flexibility on how to view things. But get comfortable with it. Make sure you know the ins and outs and that you're practicing so you make it seamless. So with that practice, some things to keep in mind. I always go back to Murphy's Law, and if it can go wrong, it will, just like you saw this morning. So having things in place, Chris and I both had copies of the full PowerPoint show. So if we had to, one person could run the whole thing. And you saw how seamless it was for Chris to be able to take it over, run the first part for the HCC meeting, and then while I fumbled around, got my PowerPoint back up and working, and then was able to switch over. So make sure you have those backup plans, and not only just one person has the capabilities to share their screen, or has the capabilities, or has the PowerPoint even on their screen. So when we do interviews, I make sure 3 or 4 people have that PowerPoint loaded on their laptop. We cannot work with VPNs during this virtual world. That thing of logging into your corporate system and having it come back slows the system down way too much. So if you're getting bandwidth issues, you're getting people freezing, not having clear video screens, it could be it's most likely the bandwidth. So making sure that you're operating off of your laptop and everything is there as seamless as possible. Same thing with playing videos. Don't ever try and play those. It's tough enough playing them off a laptop, but they're impossible to play or stream through another system. So make everything as direct as possible. The other thing is, if you're going to wire in, or if you use headphones, go with the old-fashioned plug-in ones. I don't want to rely on Bluetooth, because you never know when that battery is going to die. Same thing with your laptop. You think you have a full battery. Oh, it should last an hour, right? No problem. Don't chance it. If it dies and you have to plug in or power up halfway through, it can change your settings. I've seen people lose their audio. I've seen them lose their video. And these are things that aren't recoverable unless they totally reboot. And so don't always start off your meeting with everything set the way you anticipate it to be set for the entire meeting. And then practice, practice, practice. Make sure you've got sound, make sure you've got good bandwidth. Since I'm in the basement that I've shared with all of you, I'm actually right underneath, directly underneath my router. So I have the clearest, closest path to my internet possible, which just helps the speed and helps the reliability of all of this. And then always have a plan B. Make sure that you've got dial-in numbers. Make sure when you send out the meeting invite, you've got options for recovery and other ways for people to access the meeting. As well as we talked about, make sure other people have the ability to control or have the PowerPoint as a backup, so it is really seamless. Okay, let's talk about more of the practice, or more of practicing, and the most important thing is your camera height. This is one of the most annoying things, and I can't believe how many giraffe necks I've seen. People looking up at their camera. I don't want to see that. I want you looking direct, and I don't want you looking down at me, right? And especially if you're hovering over, nose hair is not a good look for anyone. So make sure that your camera height is set up at eye level. Right now, I'm actually standing as I do this webinar because I found just have a little bit more energy and a little bit more passion for talking and delivering an interview or a presentation if I stand versus sitting. Also, I find that my posture is much better when I stand. So I'm standing. I have my desk. I have a big file box on top of it. I have a shoe box on top of that, and then my laptop. And so that way it allows that camera to be more about eye height. So I'm looking directly at you versus down on you or up at you. This is the most critical thing. Everyone, if you have your computer on your desk solidly, it's not high enough. So think about raising that up. I keep a shoebox handy. I keep a couple big coffee table picture books laying around. So wherever I'm at, sitting, standing, I can build up the height of my laptop to make it eye level. Same thing for those that have the camera at the bottom. You've got to raise it up even further, and then you've really got to be careful about your screen so you don't get your keyboard in the picture. Play around with it though, ask a friend, make sure that you've got a good profile and that you're looking straight on at that camera. Next, I want to talk about lighting. We talked about our virtual backgrounds. You see one here. And this goes back and forth with what is the preference. I would love the natural office setting if I had a good office. And when my family allows me to be upstairs in my office, I usually don't use a virtual background. I've got a great clean wall behind me, some nice pictures on the wall. It works out really well. Being here stuck in the basement bedroom, no way I want you to see that. And so that's when I do use a virtual background to make sure that it's less annoying or less distracting for my listeners. So virtual backgrounds can be great. You got to practice with them though, as Mike was joking early on, and when I'm in person and my teams are in person, I want you to be big and bold and use your hands. Well, I just lost an arm, right? And so when you're on screen and you're using that virtual background, you got to make sure that your hands stay right in front of you. And you also got to make sure that you work with the visuals on the screen and not an in-hand visual. So I was with a group earlier today and we wanted to hold up a map, and I also hold up coaching cards. So I say this like, so what? What's your benefit? But I got to be careful, because if I go too far or too in, it's going to fold out and blind on me. And so you've really got to be careful and think about what is it you're going to use. We had one gentleman today go back to I love boards and I love being able to interact with a site plan, a logistics plan, something like that that's all about the client. And we have a great map of the project. And we're like, how do we do it? It just loses its effectiveness on screen because we really can't point out what we're trying to look for. So we've got this gentleman, we're going to set him up in an office plane, got a big board built. We're going to do the easel. So he's able to see and have the screen set in a pretty large area, but then we can't use the virtual background. And so we're cleaning up an office space and, really tidying that up so he can go in the office, present with this board, still have a great connection with the project and the audience, and look professional. So again, with our backgrounds, we really got to pay attention, but more importantly, sorry, I'm losing my words. More importantly than our background is our lighting. And this lighting is key. I've seen so many webinars where people are dark or we can't see their facial expressions. I can only see 5 or 6 of you right now online, but you're looking good. You've got that lighting thing figured out. People are, yeah. So the most important thing as we think about our lighting is to light us from the front going forward. And so when I'm standing, I'm actually standing looking at my window. And so it's got natural light, but that natural light is coming in on front of me. I've also got a couple lamps that I've got, and I put those right in front and in back of my computer. So again, the light is in front of me. The other thing I've noticed, I had to turn off my overhead light because it casts down and throws some weird shadows, and it's too distracting with the other light fixtures. So again, play around with your light, but always think about light forward facing you so you're lit from the front. The only other thing I've seen that was helpful is if you're in a big room and the room behind you is dark, sometimes you have to light up your other rooms behind you in order to balance that out and have good lighting. So light, light, light. You can rarely do too much lighting. So next, we want to have a leader of these meetings, and whether it's an internal meeting, whether it's a meeting with a client, you saw today, Chris was the leader. He kicked it off, he did the introductions, but having someone lead the meeting is really critical. The thing we have to realize too, as willing participants, we have to let that leader lead and do their job. And this is why we get so many times people talking over each other. It's been the #1 complaint is, how do we stop everyone from talking? If you have a leader, that leader helps set the stage and calls on people. The other thing the leader can do is help balance of who's talking too much or call on people that are silent, so you do get that participation that you want. And in an interview, I want the leader to be whoever has the most day-to-day contact with the owner. So if you're doing an interview, your leader is the project manager. And making sure that you set that up correctly, our leader isn't the project exec, right? It's not the president of the company. It's the person who's going to have the day-to-day client care and responsibility for that project. And then I want you to assign roles, especially internal meetings. There's a lot going on. A lot of things have to happen and take place. So having a timekeeper, having someone to take minutes, because it's hard. And as a leader, I don't want to be sitting here typing and multitasking and try and lead the meeting. So make sure assign someone to take notes so they can follow up beforehand. Make sure that person's muted, probably their camera off, because they're not going to be in an angle that they should be seen. And also we don't want that keyboard noise going. But that's part of the follow-up that makes meetings effective, is to be able to send out minutes afterwards with action items to do so people can follow up appropriately. If you're going to record things, you also need to mention that and ask for permission. Just like Chris did, they want to record this webinar so it's there and other members can view it that couldn't be with us here live in person. So he stated that and got everyone's, I wouldn't say approval, but he let you know you were being recorded today, so this could be in the archives for future use. But having those roles is critical. While we're on recording, I did have a few people for other meetings ask, do we record all of these so we don't have to take minutes? I say no. You do not want to record, if it's an OAC meeting or a project meeting, because anything that now is recorded becomes permanent record. So just when we see these things that go south, we can have people request email records, request phone text messages. They can request all recordings as part of that permanent record as well. So do be cautious about when you choose to record and when you don't. Next, call in early. As you saw here, we had a waiting room for folks, so we could let you in when we chose and gave us time to set up and do our testing, which is always nice. But you always want to make sure that you're there and waiting. It's even more annoying when you're virtually waiting for people to show up than in person. And I've really been impressed with how timely everyone has been in the last few weeks as we've gone virtual. I remember sitting in conference rooms, people would walk in 5-10 minutes late. We'd probably wait until we got started. But boy, on these calls, people are with it, which is really nice because we're showing respect for everyone. The other thing is if you are sensing some bandwidth issues or you're using some free systems, I know like Free Conference Call had some issues, set your meetings at the 15 after or even the 30, because everyone has, we're all guilty, right? Today, 11 o'clock, top of the hour, we have a meeting. But if we're having problems with bandwidth, try the 15 or the 30 or even the 45, just varying that by a few minutes lessens up that immediate overage that everyone's trying to log in at the same time. So that can be helpful. 7, of course, mute your line. Obviously, when one person's speaking, we don't want a lot of background noise. That's the biggest complaint we've heard is all the background noise going on here. I love this graphic, though, of what people are actually doing when you're on a call, right? You check out your house, you're checking out your neighbors, you're looking at, what the kids are doing, who else is in the house. This morning, we actually had, a couple of our family members just walk into the room that the guy was in, do whatever they needed to get out of it. And I was like, wow, this is really happening here. And that's fine. As a host and as a leader, we really have to have passion right now. We've got kids at home. We've got everyone in the family trying to work from home. There is a lot going on. So have compassion and empathy for your coworkers, for your client. If there is a big disruption happening, call a 5-minute break. But allow people to turn off their cameras, mute their mics, step away and do what they need to do so they can come back and have full attention. And it's your job, if you're leading this, it's your job to call that timeout and to have the grace for others and allow people to do what they have to do and still be on this. Just remember, if you ever need to walk away from a meeting, always turn your camera off and always put your line on mute. I've heard so many stories of conversations that people have heard that they probably shouldn't have, and have seen things that they don't want to. And so always make sure if you're going to walk away, turn those things off. I also like to, if I've got people joining beforehand at the beginning of the meeting, I'll oftentimes turn off my camera and mute my line as well. So people can come into the waiting room. I can still multitask, right? Check on email, do whatever I'm doing, but people can just see a photo, know that I'm there, and the meeting just hasn't started yet. So those are great ways to not have disruption and just look a little bit more professional as we're going through all of this. Next, we have to announce ourselves, especially with Zoom. It's great if everyone dials in through their computer, but when people do call in on a cell phone number, it just shows up with that cell phone number. So making sure that the leader calls roll call. You can also, the fun thing is you can also change people's names on this. And so it's really great to be able to change names, or then you can give that cell phone an identity of what they're doing. I was going to try and change Chris, and for some reason it won't let me rename him, but I was going to call him the head honcho. A lot of times that you can get in and rename folks if they're not named already. And for interviews, what I really like to do is put the first name in their role. So instead of having Mike Robinson, Mike, pre-construction manager, right? Mike, project manager, this guy, Joe, superintendent. That way your client always knows, oh, that's right, that's this person, that's their role on the project. So it can really help build and interact with folks as you're going through this. This should give some laughs. This is what our family's been doing, watching some old classics. The Princess Bride is one of my kids' favorite movies. So I had to put this on there. And this is what happens more often in just an audio version, is no one knows who's who. And especially if you've got new people on the call or it's just not all your internal folks, we can't identify a voice and know who's on the other line. So be polite, let people know. If you pop in with a comment, announce who you are so that everyone understands, oh, that's Dena speaking. It helps things, again, just go a little smoother on all of that. So tip number 9, not only listen, but we have to be present. these meetings get long. Garen, I can tell you, I speak from experience here. I'm on video calls 4, 5, 6 hours a day. It's getting old. But if I'm not present, those meetings aren't going to go as fast. And I've learned as well, there's been a lot of studies coming out about why are we so exhausted? Why are video calls so much tougher on us than being there in person? And you think about it, and if you scroll through your other participants, look at all that visual impact we have to digest. There's backgrounds, there's people's homes, there's pictures on the wall, there's books in the bookcases, there's company names up, there's all kinds of stuff. And our mind, even though we're not conscious about doing it, we're processing everything we see. And so trying to take all that in can be exhausting. But to remember to be present and look and focus on what happens, because if we're multitasking, we're not paying attention. Now, I know it's unrealistic to say, oh, don't multitask, right? I'm sure some of you are multitasking right here and now, but we have to make sure that we're, I guess, multitasking in the right way. So I'm sure everyone can guess, what is it most often people guilty of when multitasking? Let's see if you got it right. Checking emails. This was a research study did by Intercall, but every webinar that I have taught in the last 8 weeks, this has shown up as number 1, is checking email. I want to make you rethink about what you can do multitasking. It's really hard to check email and still be present on your other call because 1, you're reading the email, right? 2, if you have to type it back, you're typing, but now you're also thinking and talking to yourself of what you're going to say, and then you got to think about how to spell it. That's a lot, at least I do. There's a lot going on there that your mind is trying to do. Guess what? You're no longer listening to the meeting or the call that you're on. So if you are going to multitask, make sure it's something that you can truly do while still being present. Number 5 is my favorite. If I have a call that I'm not leading, I will often put in my headphones and take the dog for a walk. And I found by doing that, though, I am so much more present because I can really listen and take in that information and participate. My husband's a big one for exercise as well. He jumps on our stationary bike, or we'll take the dog out for a walk as well. That poor dog is getting so many walks. She's going to die when we all go back to the office. But finding something, he actually finds when he does that as well and rides the bike, he can pay attention as well and listen more intently than he was if he wasn't doing that. And so especially those that you just are listening on, find if you're going to multitask, which we know you are, okay, I'm human, I know, understand this, but make sure it's doing something that you can do, that you can still listen. All right, number 10, expand your voice. Those that I've worked with in person and on interview coaching, or maybe I've coached you for a project pursuit, know I'm all about the delivery of our message. Obviously, we have to have our content, we have to have a solid message. After that, though, is how we deliver it. And as we've talked, our body language on screen gets really minimized, and especially with the virtual backgrounds. So all that we have left is our voice. And we've got to use that every ounce that we can get out of our voice. We need to use that. So when you think about your voice, I want you to think about your articulation. Things can get really muddled and mumbled over video. So really look and think about speaking a little slower, speaking more clearly, but really enunciating each and every word, and especially that last syllable of the word, because that's what's going to make it very clear for your listener and help you to be more understood. The other thing is going back to those old-fashioned tips and tricks that we use as well. If you're rattling off several ways to do things, first do this, next do this, lastly do this. It's going to help those listeners follow along with you and keep up when we don't have as many visuals as we might have in person. As well as our voice, we think about all the things it can do. It really is an amazing thing. You know, you've got how fast and your cadence, what's that pacing like? What's your volume? And typically the volume is just conversational. We don't need to knock it up a notch like we do when we're in person. We all have microphones. Let the microphone do its job. They are made to pick up sound and transmit it. If we're in person, we don't have the aid of a microphone. So I'll constantly be telling people, you know, louder, I can't hear you, kick it up. Online, we don't need to do that. And here's why. If I pick up my volume, all of a sudden I am shouting at you, right? Even though I'm not saying anything mean, it comes across a lot harsher. So keeping that volume is very conversational, keeps it going. The thing you want to remember, it's all about variety. And the more variety you can have, the more you're going to keep up the interest of your listeners. This is a graphic a lot I use to look at the different characteristics and perception that our voice gives off. So if we're too loud and too short in our words, we can come across really authoritative, but it's not the authoritative that we want typically, being the expert or sounding really confident in our approach or our progress that we're making, but it can sound too dictatorish and too authoritarian. So really watching that and backing off the loudness, the volume of our voice is going to help a lot. We want to live in that green zone where we're very authentic. We have a slow, soft, conversational pitch to what we're doing. One thing I'm seeing big time is people think they can cheat on interviews and on meetings because they're virtual, so people can't see my notes. Well, guess what? I can tell you're reading. And when you're reading, you're not authentic. You're not conversational. I can tell you read to me. So please don't cheat. We will find out. It's just like in grade school, if you wrote the little answers on your palm of your list or your hand, your teacher knew when you were looking down at that. We know when you're lying or reading to us. So no cheating in the virtual world. It might look like you can do it easily, but you really can't. And then I love when you get excited, bring in that animation, bring in the anticipation. We still need to show our personality and our fun, right? Our passion for it. Even though we're on video, doesn't mean that you can go robotic. Your clients still want to know that you're just as passionate and excited about their project as they are. So we've really got to sometimes even fake it a little bit, but make sure that we've got some animation and passion to what we're saying. You can tell this is my high horse. I love teaching people how to make a better connection with their audience and have a greater impact with people. And it's really through your voice. It's all about the delivery of your message to show them that you care. And the other thing we covered about the camera height and looking at the camera, but we also have to train ourselves as we're speaking and in this virtual world, we've got to look at that little green dot. We've got to be solely focused on the dot. And sometimes it's hard because I really want to look down at all your lovely faces. And I want to look at you and I want to talk to Drew and to Jennifer and to Ellie and to Samantha. But guess what? If I'm doing that, I'm not looking at you, am I? You can tell the difference. And so really forcing yourself to not look at the participants, but to look at that green light when you speak. When you're done speaking, sure, come down, check out the crowd, make sure they're still nodding, agreeing with you. But keep always focused on that camera because that's going to give your audience that feeling like, wow, they're talking to me. Oh, I didn't finish this. Sorry, going back a step. So we talk about filler words. And when we're in person, the ums, the ahs, so get really annoying. What I'm finding on the video is it's not so much the filler words are happening with folks, but it's the reassurance words. So the right or don't you know? Because we're not there to get that feedback in person. And so we don't know, are people still listening to us? Are they buying into this? Do they agree? Do they like what I'm saying? So if you catch yourself, don't look for that approval. You're just gonna have to trust yourself that you're making the impact you want and move on. Because if we say right after everything we say, that gets equally as annoying as an or an ah. Okay, those that know me know I had to throw this in there, right? My wimpy words. No, same thing on these meetings. Anytime you're trying to be persuasive, confidence is always key. And if we're talking, we say, well, I think we should try this. It might work. You know, we typically come in on budget. We should be able to meet your schedule. Is anyone going to hire you? No. Is anyone going to buy into this idea if you're pitching a new idea or a new marketing plan or a new partnership with a GC from a minority firm? Whatever you're trying to pitch, if you use these wimpy words, people are not going to buy into it. So confidence is even more important when we're online. We got to have empathy and sincerity. We can't get arrogant, but we need to have confidence and we need to always use those positive words. All right, 11, be concise. No one likes a person that's rambling, but especially a rambler on video, you lose your audience even quicker. So when you think about this, think about shorter words, fewer words, and short sentences. And this is really critical. If you've got those highly technical people in your office, really work with them with this, because technical people like to show how smart they are. And they're going to use big, large words, complicated words, long sentences. Well, guess what? That just went right over my head because we don't have the visual, we don't have the body language, we don't have everything else to help us understand the message. So we really have got to simplify it over video. So again, shorter words, shorter sentences, fewer words is going to help make that easier. It's also going to keep it conversational and help people so they don't feel like they have to memorize or use a bunch of notes to get through their parts. And lastly, when you end your meeting, you always need to ask for questions and provide a recap. You want to make sure that people understood things. You want to make sure that everyone understands their to-do or their action items moving forward. What is the time frame? And these are all basic things, right? We all know about setting good goals, but set a time frame, recap who's doing what, who they need to get it to, by when they need to get it to. But that follow-up is critical to make sure people are being productive and getting things turned in on time. I just wanted to end with this quote because I thought this was really important. Communication works for those that work at it. And this is hard. I know it's hard. It's not fun. Most of us don't enjoy it, but it's where we're at. And if you work a little harder at it, you can at least make it more enjoyable for those around us. With that, let's go to some questions and open it back up. So I am absolutely fine if people unmute and use their actual voice for this, and then we'll come back and close out. Let me see if I can get this to work. All right, I've got most of you on view now that I can see everyone's fabulous faces. So what challenges have you faced during this time? What's going on with the virtual world? And let's do a raise your hand since I can see people if you've got your video on, and then I'll call on you. All right, we got Drew, and then I think Allie wants to say something. Drew, you first.
Hey, Dena. So it was interesting last week, and Mike can give his 2 cents on this as well, but we had a virtual interview for Colorado Convention Center. And so that was very, wow, paradigm shift, right? So how do we orchestrate like everything that you're talking about as far as like looking at the camera? But like, I guess really I don't have so much of a question as so much as a best practice really. And for us, because I think we're going to feel or see more of these types of interviews, obviously going forward. You know, we've had several already. It's going to be one of those things where it's like for us, we had someone keeping track of time, right? So if you have an allocated time, it was like, so we had a running group text with everyone that was on the call. And honestly, it's like we finished so if we were getting slow in an area, they were like, Drew, you know, you got to hurry up. You got to cut something from your section, right? And it worked like flawlessly. Like we got done with the interview. We had 30 seconds left to spare before we went to Q&A. And so it was just like, it couldn't have gone any better. But we were like, wow, you know, for the first time having to do an interview with that, like 15 people on it, it was pretty amazing. So
that's awesome. What did you do with that same thing? The timekeeper is huge when you've got those timed interviews, and to keep, because, you know, in person we can give some signals, we can give some clues, we've got some other body language things we can do, but virtually we can't. So I love the fact that you use a group text. So the thing with that, when you're on with a client, especially in an interview, never use the platform chat, because like Microsoft Teams keeps record of that. So never ever chat on the platform. So I love that you did that separately. How did you handle transitions? Because that's another struggle that everyone has. And virtual transitions are much different than what we can do in person.
They are much different. And so we had to be very cognizant, right? And so like I was very like you have to almost make yourself uncomfortable on cam, right? And you're very smiley, like, you know, just making that effort to make sure that you're not looking like a robot. But with transitions, for us, we were trying to keep things very personable and show that our design build team had significant experience working together. You know, we were trying to say, look, we've got 38 years and over 80 projects working together. So for us, we wanted to convey that and bolster that by like showing the client, look, we know each other on a first name basis, right? So in our transition, we'd be like, you know, when everyone was done, I'd be like, over to you, John. And that was kind of like how we would queue up like the next person. Was just, we really rolled into it that way. And I don't know, Mike probably has something to add to that or whatnot, but it was just like, wow, I've never been in an interview, honestly, that went that amazing before. It's flawless. So
the only challenge that I noticed was when we were doing our introductions at the beginning of the interview, since only 4 people could be on the screen on Teams, is we would start speaking. I would say, hi, I'm Mike Robinson. And then my video would pop on and it would recognize me as a speaker. And then it would only catch senior pre-construction manager, I'm your money guy. So that was one challenge. And I tried tapping on the speaker, you know, to kind of make it think that or the microphone to think it was me ready to go. But that was the one challenge that I noticed.
Yeah, there is that lag time as it changes speakers. They can be, we just have to accommodate for it and be ready for it. Exactly. Who else? Allie, did you have a thought you wanted to share or a question?
I you know, the wimpy words, I always make that note, and I have removed the I think out of my vocabulary because I don't like that I think. Yeah. But I thought that I believe was stronger, but you also have I believe is wimpy words. So one is, you don't want to be too cocky to say, I know this, you know, how you want to convey, especially with a client, even for your team, that you want to convey that message, but without the wimpy word, with the cocky word, or, you know, too confident. So what is that balance of the words that you can use to prove, and hate to use the gender card, but also as a woman, when you have to put that statement saying, I know this is what we need to do, but, you know, and I don't want to go into another Pandora box with that, but.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned that, though, because on the slide, I had I think and I believe with a little asterisk next to it. And I forgot to come back and mention that. So those two words, I don't mind if people use that if you're talking about how you compare yourself to the industry or to a competitor. I believe we're the strongest team, or we have the best working relationship, right? If we use Drew's example, I believe our team has a stronger relationship than any other team. Okay, because you don't want to sound arrogant. So I believe, I think is appropriate there. I never want to hear, though, I think our solution's the best, right? Because no, you know your solution's good. And so you have to really, it's a delicate balance, but I think and I believe if you're comparing yourself, you don't want to sound arrogant. So that's when you can use that. If it's a solution that you believe in, if it's a course that should be charted, if it's a direction that we need to move, then we just don't, we leave that I know, I think, those qualifier words, just leave them out. Here's what we do. So hopefully that, and I appreciate that you came back to saw that, because I forgot on this one to mention those two and talk about the difference of when we can use the I think and I believe. But I don't ever want to use that if it's a thought, an idea, especially a solution. You know your solution is going to work. So we got to be still confident on that. Miss Lisa, you unmuted.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My question is around etiquette. What if you're in a situation where a conversation happens that you did not want people to hear, and it was more of a thing that was more inappropriate than anything? How do you handle that? You know, sometimes you can, in the non-virtual world, if you're walking outside of a meeting room, oh, John, I'm so sorry that happened. You know, I didn't mean for that type of thing. But how do you look at that in the virtual world, the etiquette of things?
I guess if in that case, if someone overheard something they might not have, depending on how sensitive of a nature it is, I might pick up the phone right after that meeting and call them. You know, and if it's something where you forgot to mute and you were talking, gosh, my apologies. You know, I thought our line was muted. We never expected anyone to hear that. I think I would deal with it almost the same way you would in person, by addressing it as personal as you can. So picking up the phone, you know, maybe a text message if it needs to be real quick that you can't pick up the phone. Maybe send a text real quick, like, oh my gosh, and apologize. It's sort of the same thing. As long as you know you have empathy and you're trying to do the right thing, that always goes so far.
Okay.
Jennifer, did you have something?
I do. I have a question for you. So I sympathize with Lisa because I've been on conference calls where our mute function didn't work. And so they heard us talking about like our hair or whatever. So it does happen. What the question I have for you, so my role, I work as an outreach coordinator for the local school district here in Denver. Our biggest function is networking, connecting people with each other. And I've been trying to figure out how that's going to work in our new digital environment. We had our quarterly networking event coming up actually in 2 days, which we're postponing and looking at digital versions for. And so my question to you is more around, how do you see that moving forward in the virtual environment? What I've been looking at, what I've been kind of looking at a pattern of, is people are doing topic specific, you know, sessions where like, this is what we're going to talk about and this is how we invite you to engage with us. And what does that look like for general networking? And one of the biggest challenges I'm facing is our largest annual event is in October, and I usually have around 80 to 90 companies that come out and are then able to present themselves to all of our decision makers. And we're being asked by the governor to consider alternative education plans for late fall or late summer, early fall because of the probable resurgence around that time of COVID. Where do you see the industry moving forward? Because I'm trying to look at different applications where we can, implement, corporate roundtable type of environments where people can engage with us ahead of time, where they can tell me what their interest is, and how can I best serve our community? Because at this point, I think it's a common question. I've had other industry professionals reaching out to me to ask me, and I'm looking at the camera, reaching out to ask me where we see the future of our industry going and what potential solutions there are. So a lot of research going into it. At this point, I'm really not quite sure how to maximize that exposure for the people that we advocate for.
Mm-hmm. And this is something that everyone right now is really fighting towards, because we all need to keep an association. I'm so proud of HCC and Summer and Lisa for putting this workshop together. And we talked about what format do we use. We said, no, let's host it on Zoom, because even right now, you can all see each other, right? There's a little bit of a bond that can form. You can have some discussions. You can ask more questions. Well, Drew, what do you mean by this? And so opening that up, and even though it's virtual and it's not the same, I found Zoom to be the best alternative when it comes to this, because we can still interact, we can see people, we can force them together. So on even a general networking call, you could bring everyone together, and then depending on the number, have everyone introduce themselves, have a couple maybe icebreakers that you could go through. And then if you've got a larger group, you need facilitators for this, but you can break people up and throw them into Zoom rooms. And then they can, as a small group, really dive into a topic, and they can decide that topic, right there, then and there, how are things going, but it allows for a little bit more intimate discussion or chat to go on versus the entire call. So there is some neat things with the platform that you can do to help bring it back a little bit. But I think we're going to be forced with this for a while. So learning how to communicate with people, learning how to draw others in. I think you could also work out in a virtual world how to present those things to all your members. How many people are familiar with NAIOP? Just a couple. So NAIOP is I'm going to get this wrong. It's an association. Let's just put it that way. Lots of developers, lots of architects, contractors. I forget exactly what it stands for, but every year they have the big real estate challenge. And this is the top team from DU and the top team from CU real estate schools go head to head, and they develop a project and pitch it, in a sense, to all these real estate brokers. And so it's this big contest. It's gotten huge publicity. Usually they have a big gala where they announce the winners and have like the showdown. It's 700 people. So obviously did not happen this May, and it all went virtual. But what they did is they set up different rooms. So like the judge could have their room and they could talk and evaluate the teams. And they did a lot of different things, but these schools were able to get on and still present their project, just like we present on the interview. And you heard Drew and Mike talk about their presentation to the city and county of Denver last week. We can still have these big formal events happen, but in a virtual world. Now, are they still as engaging? Are they still as fun? No. But it's still a way that we can keep them happening and go along. Has anyone, I would love to call in the audience at this point too, has anyone been involved in a big thing, and how has that gone, and what else can we learn from that? Ellie?
Well, we have had, in Mortensen, we have 13 offices across the nation. So we have had updates from headquarters, and we have, my gosh, I don't know how many thousands of people in the call. So we use webinar, GoToWebinar, because I think it can allow up to 3,000. And, Jennifer, I wish we all have the answer what's going to happen with our industry. What we know for sure is we're going to adapt and keep evolving and do what we need to do to keep relevant, because that's construction we have been doing for many, many years. And this is not going to be different. For you, maybe a suggestion, like Dena say, have different days for different scopes of work, and have a couple general contractors for some scope of work, and have those meetings together in rooms to separate them, and host it in different dates, because again, you're not going to be able to bring everybody in a day that works for people or the time that works for people, especially now small businesses are trying to find a way to find jobs and be paid and keep their people employed. So business owners don't have much flexibility. They didn't have much, and now it's going to be worse. So maybe try to figure out a way to be different scopes of work, different times, different dates, and sign general contractors for a specific scope of work and have different rooms to coordinate. And, we all know this is challenging. So it's nothing like you are the only one putting this together. I think it's more valuable, like Dena said, we're doing something to keep connected instead of like, sorry, because this year we cannot do it, we're going to cancel it. No, we're still trying to figure out, might not be perfect, but we're at least trying to stay connected and find opportunities for everybody.
Absolutely. Rochelle, did you have something?
I did. There's two things that I wanted to say. I am very appreciative. I'm a business developer for a supply distributor. And so I am about making connections, and I need that visual. I find that my energy comes up when I see a face. So I totally wanted to tell you that I like literally jump through the screen when I see somebody like, oh, you're a person and you're not just a name or an initial. So I'm going to encourage that. I also wanted to say, like, for Kim and Troy, putting up, if I took off my video right now, I would have, and I can show you that I have, let's see, I think my face came up on there. Yeah. I wanted to comment and say that to me is even more positive than, again, the name. It just, because eventually I will be able to see these people back out in public again. And I connect by remembering, oh, there's Drew. I know who Drew is. And it calls me into a business connection of all the times that I have seen Drew and I connect. So I encourage that as a person that I need that. I hope that you guys will all figure out how to put your picture associated in your settings of whatever platform you're using, whether it be in Teams or it be in Zoom or etc. You can put your picture there. So kudos to Kim and Troy. With that also being said, I have been in a lot of networking or hearing about projects from either the city of Denver. Jennifer, this is to you, Drew as well. I had one of the most enjoyable and really truly connecting moment with Whiting Turner. They did an open house, and it would have been one of those ones that we would have gone to for the National Western Stock Show Equestrian Center. They broke it up into rooms, and I had not done that before, and I was kind of a little nervous, but they really explained, number one, who the leaders of those rooms were, what the topic was going to be covering. And it took a little bit of getting to know how to do it, because there was a place that you had to register. That wasn't like totally clearly stated. But long story short, you would go into these rooms, and then it was a connection point. You really had people, and you were, I guess in a way, when there were other people that wanted to talk to them, we were respectful of each other. You listened, you took your turn to have something specific you wanted to ask them. I'm just going to encourage any of the large businesses or people that are, or DPS that is trying to connect to people. Again, I find it to be something that I'm very concerned about for our future, not just COVID right now, but we do have this eventual place where we will all be back together. And if we don't use this time to be connected and be willing to try something new. I guess I would just encourage people to try instead of being quiet, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think that's the worst thing, is just don't cancel or hide.
Yeah.
During this time, we still have to be present, and it's still, and people are craving connection. They're craving interaction with people. And so we need to fill that void, and especially associations. I'm so glad to hear Whiting Turner taking that workforce development and putting it online, because that's something we're all challenged with, is we still have to recruit. We still have to promote things. We still need interaction. So try. If we fail, we'll try something new, but at least we're trying.
Absolutely. And then also, before I'll mute myself, but Chris, kudos to you as well. These interactions as the association, you are absolutely showing up, following up, doing a great job. And so kudos, really, that is really big. So good job.
Nice. We have a couple minutes left, I believe, for maybe one or two more questions. Shane, you just unmuted, so I'm going to take that as a sign.
Yeah, what do you think? I see a couple friendly faces here that I know, but going and making that 10, 15-minute call, how you doing, anything I can help you with, is kind of, it's not there right now, of course. So is a Zoom stop, hey, do you want to Zoom real quick, what's going on, better than just a phone call at this point? Or is it just the phone call still the best?
Yeah, I think this is probably personal, but one-on-one, I just want a phone call. Pick up the phone, call me. And it's not about business, right? It's not like, do you have a project for us? What work do you have coming on? But it's just, how are you right now? How is your family? And even when Summer called me to ask me to do this webinar, we spent the first 10 minutes probably talking about her kids and my kids and, something I saw on Facebook with our family dancing. And, it's just, but it was fun for us. We reconnected. And then, okay, we got down to business and made it happen. But started off, and I think now more than ever, we need to start off with that personal, how are you? How are you personally handling this? How is your family? What's your situation like? Because the best thing I heard is we're all in the same storm, but we're all in a different boat. And we are all handling this and coping with it in different ways. So absolutely still pick up the phone. And then if they want to Zoom or contact, I let sort of people direct that if they want. But a lot of clients are still hosting like happy hours with folks or calling maybe a project team together just for the fun of it, but find ways to connect. But yeah, pick up that old-fashioned phone. I don't know if anyone else has a different practice, but I'm like, pick up the phone and call me. I'd love to hear from people.
Yeah, this is Summer Westbrooks. So I was talking to a neighbor yesterday, and he's in business development, and he was saying that he, had a happy hour scheduled with a really big client of theirs. And so what he ended up doing was just getting him a cheap bottle of wine, and he wrote him a note. He knew where he lived, and he dropped it off and said, hey, I think we should still keep our happy hour scheduled. Here's a bottle of wine. So even just doing something with a little touch like that, not all of us know where people live, but if you do know someone really well who is a really good client, maybe it's nice to just, put a can of beer at their door, whatever it might be, just to give that personal touch to them.
Absolutely.
Shane, you can Zoom anytime you want. No
Appreciate that, Mike.
No problem.
I'm probably more sensitive to it because literally I have been online. I think I can count 1, maybe 2 days in 8 weeks that I haven't had to dress up and get on camera. So for me, I'm sort of like, oh God, don't make me, if we can do it on the phone, please just call me. I don't want another video call, but I think I'm a little bit of not the norm right now with everything going on. But it's all about connection. So don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call people. With that, one more question, Jennifer.
I did have a quick question before we drop off, and I don't mean to belabor the point, but in the opening slides, you had mentioned that people should remain muted and keep their camera offline to prevent bandwidth issues. And so there seems to be some sort of a balancing act there where we have people that are on camera so that we can create that connection, but we also want to maintain that bandwidth availability. So is there a certain cutoff point that you would recommend in terms of like if we have a call like today, or we have 30 participants and looking forward, because I'm anticipating closer to 300 to 400 participants in October. So where does that line really, where would you recommend we make that request?
Yeah, and that's a little bit of a tough one. If it's just the videos and just the people, typically you can have everyone have their cameras on until you see issues, and then ask people to turn them off for a point. I think it's just about establishing and see what they hold. A lot of our clients are dictating that, they will have all their cameras off to not disrupt that. And they sort of leave it up to you of when you have them on, when you have them off. If you're streaming video or doing a lot of demand on it, then we'll have a lot of times people turn theirs off during a certain section and then turn it back on. And you have to practice. So I know you can't practice with all 300 people, but maybe you could get a small group together and say, does it affect this? Does this still work if we're doing this? If you're broadcasting from an office, you should be okay. And so it's all a give and take and what is gonna make the best for each situation. And that's why I came back to say, all right, let's come back together, turn on our cameras and talk. So I gave that permission and really told people what I wanted to do. And I think I even made the comment as well, unmute, let me know you got a question. And even watching the display here, I could tell if someone unmuted, I'm like, oh, I know they've got a question. So it helped me as a leader to go to that person and call on them. So it's just a little bit of, it's all a give and take, right? There's never a right and wrong. And I say this all the time with project interviews. The same thing in the virtual world. I mean, there are some, I think, harder right and wrongs there, but you always have to assess the situation to say what's the best for this group. With 300 people, you probably do need people muted, have them put in a chat box. If they have a question, then you can have someone watching that chat box and giving the leader direction of what the question is, or maybe even type in questions and then say, oh, I know Jennifer has a question. You already know what it is, but maybe you call that person to the front to then ask it. But it takes a little bit more coordination with larger groups. All righty, I'm gonna flip back to give, I think Chris has got some closing remarks.
I do. Thank you, Dena. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And I don't know about everybody else, but I learned quite a few things today. And as somebody mentioned earlier, we've been doing quite a few webinars already over the last few weeks. And each time we do them, we learn something new. And it's very helpful to keep sharing and wanting to get that information from folks. So the screen that's up now is follow us, tag us. These are various ways of social media that you can follow us. We appreciate you doing that. We appreciate when we send out announcements for webinars, if you would share that with your networks. We're just trying to make sure we're reaching as many of our businesses and members of HCC and providing them the opportunities to learn some new things as we were able to do today. I think it's very valuable to all of us as we're in this new environment to continue learning new things, and this is a good way of doing it. You also can tag us. We appreciate if you would. If you would also use our hashtags, hashtag HCC, HCC leads. We appreciate it. It just helps us get more hits out there. Again, helping us spread more information with our membership and others that are following us. We're also, here's a survey, it's a link. We're going to send that link to everyone that was on the call today. Please complete the survey, send it back to us. That's how we get the feedback of what we need to provide as far as future topics, but more importantly, what we're doing well, what we're not doing. It was nice to hear from Michelle today saying that we appreciate the webinars that HCC's been doing and providing. We want to make sure we continue to provide them, but we also want to make sure they're very timely. As Jennifer talked about, we're going into a new environment. We're not going into it. We're in this new environment, the storm, as Dena said. And how do we continue our networking? HCC, as Dena mentioned earlier, is a family, close-knit group of folks. We've done a lot of great networking and built a lot of relationships through our general membership meet dinners on a monthly basis. What's going to be the new phase? How do we do this going forward? This is one of those. I think today's exercise, today's webinar was really nice for me. I got to see everybody's face. I know I'm developing relationships with you guys. There's some new faces here. I think that's helpful to see those faces so that when we say we're going to do a webinar, and I assume that one or two of the GCs on here are going to want to do a webinar with HCC on a future project, then when we post that, some of you will say, oh, I remember they were on this call, and have that face and be able to connect that way, because I think that's really, truly how we're going to build those relationships going forward. We do need to hear from you on our survey to make sure that we are hitting and doing the right things that would help us. Speaking of webinars, we have one, save the date, May 20th is going to be instead of our normal dinner, we're doing a legislative update, a Colorado legislative update. We already have the governor confirmed to speak to the membership. We're trying to get the mayor of Denver confirmed as well. It will be in the afternoon. I believe it starts at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's going to be a little different. But we're also looking at other ways of doing things, maybe doing a happy hour for our membership and everybody bring their drink. I've seen that going on. Got some more ideas today on how we could probably put one of those in place. But our meetings, our webinars have been small in nature, been good. We've been able to really touch base with folks. And I think they're being helpful. So we're looking forward to this first one, our first GMM, May 20th. And hopefully you all will be able to attend. You can sign up through our website, and you also will get it through our newsletter that we've been sharing. One of the things at HCC, our newsletter has always just been for members, and through the COVID-19, we have been sharing our newsletter with everybody in our database. So we're trying to help everyone in the industry, not just our HCC members, but we do send out some information to our membership to make sure you're aware of and have access to it. And then we try to provide these opportunities at no cost for you as well. So again, Dena, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. It was a great seminar. webinar. I used to do seminars. I can't get that word out, but they're the same. It's a great webinar, and I appreciate everyone's time today. Really do. And those who made donations, our sponsorships, appreciate the sponsors for today, Exus and Saunders Construction. This is how we're going to continue to keep our doors open and provide this type of information to you. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Look forward to seeing you all at our next webinar.
Sounds great. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dena.